Watch out for those weirdos.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Green cloud.
In 1996, Columbia Pictures released the teenage horror film The Craft. The film is the story of 4 Los Angeles high school outcasts who find power and protection in the art of witchcraft.
Beruza Balk portrays the story's antagonist, or some would argue protagonist, Nancy. She has been dealt a rough lot in life and lives in a trailer park with her mother and abusive stepfather. Feeling powerless in her home and school life, she finds her power in the craft with her 2 and only friends, Rochelle and Bonnie.
Rochelle, portrayed by Rachel True, is on the dive team at the school and is constantly belittled by the belligerent and racist Laura. Bonnie, portrayed by Neve Campbell, has lost all self-confidence due to burn scars over a large portion of her body.
The 3 friends are committed to witchcraft as it serves to deepen their friendship and offer power and protection for the cruelty of their fellow schoolmates. And while they are proficient, something was missing that could take their power to the next level. That something was Sarah.
A fresh transplant from San Francisco battling demons of her own, Sarah, played by Robin Tunney, also has a hard time fitting in. The 4 young women find each other, and what happens next is, well, magic.
Things go well for the quartet for a time, but they soon learn that all things have consequences, especially when one's intentions is factored into the mix. The chaos that they unleash ends in a duel between Nancy and Sarah. Who will be the victor and who will be vanquished?
The Craft had a budget of $15 million and grossed over $55 million worldwide. Reviews were mixed from critics and audience alike. Rita Kempley of the Washington Post called the film a bubbling mess of a movie that leaves us more bothered than bewitched.
Roger Ebert praised the film's performances, but felt that it missed the mark, opining that it tilts too far in the direction of horror and special effects when it might have been more fun to make a satirical comedy about punk teenagers.
Despite the panning of the film by some, it has since earned a well-deserved place among other beloved cult classics. So where do you stand? Is The Craft a brilliant treatise on the teen experience or a hot mess?
It's time to light some candles and call the corners as we discuss The Craft. Welcome to Popped. I'm Daniel, and this is my co-host Tanya. Joining us today on our new improved guest rotation is Eric Cheung. You'll remember Eric from our episode on The Island. We've been vowing to get Eric back, and with his keen insights into the industry and big love of all things film and television, we're happy to have him. Welcome back, Eric.
Thank you. Well, glad to be here.
All right, we're happy to have you. And hey, Tanya.
Hey, Daniel, what's going on?
Not much. It's great to see you on here without any lag.
I know. The universe is conspiring in a good way for us this evening.
Yeah, if any of you watched our Brazil episode, Tanya appeared unusually quiet, and it was because she had really, really bad lag and didn't want to step in and be off time. Plus, she was real tired.
It was a double whammy that day for sure.
Yeah, work.
Yeah, but now I'm going to interrupt everybody because there's no lag. Oh, take that. It's gonna be
All
great.
right. Sounds good. Finally, it'll be somebody else interrupting besides me. I like that. So we're going to talk about the 1996 film, The Craft. But first, we have an email. Yes, we have an email, and it comes from Stacy Marple in Connecticut. What's up, Popped? Long time listener, now watcher, first time writer inner. I like that. Thank you for calling out Mattel on their human rights abuses. I buy Barbies for my 7-year-old daughter, and if I'd known that, I would have chosen something else for her to play with. Time to rethink her play options. You guys made so many great points. My only criticism is that sometimes you don't always respond to what the other person said. Still love the show. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think sometimes we think the other person might be making a different point than they're making, so we're responding to what we think they're saying. I don't know that it's, well, maybe that's exactly it. I don't know. What do you think, Tanya?
What did you say, Daniel? I'm sorry. I wasn't listening.
Huh?
I'm kidding. No, but honestly, that is great feedback. Thank you for that. I think that, I know for me, sometimes I'm so focused on what I want to say that maybe I need to make a point of listening more. So
Yeah,
feedback.
And she's
Good.
right. Actually, you and I both did it in the Barbie episode, and I know because I re-listened to it at least twice, and I was sitting there and I said something and you responded with something that was in the movie. It wasn't real world. And then you had made a comment, and I think I completely glossed over it. So it happens from time to time. I mean, mostly we actively listen to each other. Mostly.
Mostly. And I will say, let's give each other a little grace because it was our first time back in a new format after a very long hiatus. So,
yeah, and without the golden voice, Mr. Ben. So
yes.
All right. Well, you guys want to talk about The Craft?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's see. I'll get us started off here as like I usually do, unless somebody else wants to take this. No? All right. So, The Craft. I remember seeing this in the theater, and I saw it back in, 96 when they released it. And for me, it was really interesting because, I had been in a on again, off again relationship with a girl who Nancy reminded me of almost entirely, without the crazy and without the trailer park. But, I had a type. So, anyway, it was interesting watching the film because I think I had a little more empathy for Nancy than I was supposed to have. But I'm curious with you guys. Did you see it when it was in the theater, or did you actually wait until it was out on home video? Let's go with our guest first. Eric, what was your experience?
My perspective on The Craft is very different. I had just left college and was moved back to LA, and managed to fall into an interesting job where I was working in post-production at Sony Pictures lot. And the company that I got hired into was actually working on The Craft. This was one of the first films which I helped work on. So I got to see very early cuts and drafts of this as we were editing the film. It was interesting as a teen supernatural film, which was still relatively new ground for society at the time. I think maybe we had gotten a few like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or things like that that were out, but it was still relatively new ground. So that's where I first saw The Craft, was in early cuts in the editing rooms, working with the various editors and setting up their dailies and what they were editing.
So you're not familiar with this film at all?
No, actually. It would be several months after its release before I finally actually saw the full cut of it, because I had seen so many of the early cuts that it was just kind of like, should I actually go see this in its final cut?
I would be so curious. I couldn't help myself but go watch it.
It didn't resonate with me while we were cutting it, that because I didn't see the whole thing put together, so I was only seeing bits and pieces of it. and the bits and pieces just didn't come together for me as a story. I mean, I got to meet some of the stars as they would come on the lot for like to record some ADR stuff, and it was really cool. And then later on, about I would say a good 10 years later, I noticed that a lot of the women in my life had this movie on their shelves. And it was one of those like, this thing's haunting me. It's chasing me. All these years later, I can't get away from it.
Eric, if ever there were signs that you should have paid attention to. All right. Well, Tanya, now we know that Eric is deeply involved in this film, and he should have gotten us a guest because, you know, he was on the film. What's your background with the film?
Okay, first I want to say it's awesome that you've worked on this film, and I'm so curious to hear about your insights as we go through the discussion, because I think you have some really valuable things to say, and I can't wait. I'm very curious. I did see this in the theater when it first came out. I kind of, particularly at that time, I was like early 20s. I was waxing witchy at that point in my life, as I think a lot of people, you know, my age do.
Was that opposed to
women.
like a shaving witchy?
A shaving witchy?
Waxing
Oh,
versus shaving.
I get it. That was funny, Daniel. It was really funny. Yeah.
Rim shots going in there, right there.
More dad
Anywho.
jokes to come.
But yes, I saw it in the theater. I really liked it for a variety of reasons, and then have seen it multiple times since then. I don't actually own the film. It is not sitting on a shelf. I did have to stream it for this episode, but did rent it on VHS quite a lot in my earlier days. Yeah.
We own it, and it's definitely on the shelf here because it's Anita's film. So, Eric, I hear you, man. I hear you. But, you know, like I said, I have a type. Anyway, what I liked about this film, I'm just going to kind of roll into this, like what we liked about this film, as opposed to if there was something you didn't like, we can get into that too. But you know how the Lost Boys sort of brought that modern sexy edge to vampires? I kind of felt this film did that with witches, because before that, witches were always sort of portrayed as like, you know, evil hags, this, that, or the other. I know we had Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but it was a while before the witch in the show became, you know, kind of a, I don't know if she was really a good guy. She kind of went down a dark path. But this was also like 2 years before Practical Magic. So before they had, you know, the beautiful witches and Practical Magic, there was this. And I thought they did a good job. I felt like they respected, you know, the magic. They didn't try to go too far out of control with it. Although I do feel like the magic itself was a little much at times. I don't know. Another thing I really liked about this film was you had, you know, an ensemble cast, 4 characters, and we actually got to know each character a little bit. I mean, they didn't deep dive into them, but for this type of film, I wouldn't expect that. What do you guys think? I'm going to pass it to Tanya since I went to you last time, Eric. So Tanya, what do you think? What did you like about the craft?
Oh gosh, a lot. I liked, particularly at that age, that it really focused on 4 interesting, strong, yet flawed young women who all had a part to play and didn't feel like paper cutouts. Like they were interesting humans, which I feel, particularly at that time, for female characters was not all that common, honestly. I enjoyed the visuals of it. The costume design was great. Just especially Fairuza Balk, like she was such like a little baddie. Like how could you not just absolutely fall in love with her evil craziness? But yeah, and the acting was great. It was a real, like, a girl power film in an odd and occultish way, which I loved.
You feel that way, Eric, or you have a different take on this?
It definitely touched into the girl power, feminine. It also it was very much the outcasts of society. I felt like bringing them, empowering them, which at the time, was a little on the, I mean, everybody wanted to be the popular kid, and this was one of those films where it was the outcasts which took power and what they could do with it. I mean, it was previously we'd seen like Bewitched, where she had powers, but she was an adult and she was part of accepted society. I mean, not as a witch, but as an adult person. She wasn't really an outcast even amongst her own kind. But these girls were all shunned. These were the others that didn't get a seat at the popular table.
I mean, do you really feel Sarah was a shunned character? Only when she got to this school. She was sort of a situational outcast.
We didn't really get a whole lot of her past.
No, we didn't.
Before she got to the school, so we don't know.
Honestly, she was the main character is the one I had the most problems with.
Yeah, but we did know, and they don't really go into it, but we do know that she had a troubled enough past to make an attempt on her own life.
Yes.
So clearly she was dealing with some major issues, even if it wasn't something that they delved into.
I always felt that was just the guilt over her mom dying in childbirth, because they didn't really explain it. Other than that, they don't give us anything to go by, right? Mm-hmm. Right now, she's depressed because daddy moved. Aw, whatever. You know how many times my family moved? Whatever. Give me a break. So that main character for me was the weakest character, and I felt like she was the empty calorie sitting in the middle of what was a pretty good story.
Yikes. That's rough.
Hey, I'm just being honest here. You don't have to feel that way. That was just when I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, I really don't care about this main character. She makes dumb decisions, and like, she's not very bright. She figures stuff out only because she's pushed into a corner, which is totally legit. But I struggled trying to get behind her as a protagonist. So
I could see that. I mean, she was brand new to the school. She was dealing with still her being an outcast, being depressed, being that new person, and probably feeling very helpless without any power until she found this group, or this group found her.
Yeah, I mean,
it's been a while since I've actually sat down and watched it, but I'm trying to remember if she was already kind of in touch with her witchcraft before the girls showed up.
Well,
that's funny.
She was.
I actually have a
spinning the pencil, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which to me is not really magic as much as it's Uri Geller. I mean, it just was a weird way to like display her powers in the beginning.
Yes.
So overt, Oh, I can, telekinetically hold a pencil up. That's not magic. That's not witchcraft. That's fucking telekinesis. But I'm splitting hairs.
I have a different take than you gentlemen. I definitely felt like Nancy was the key that unlocked the power of these three other girls.
I agree.
Like,
I just
Nancy
feel like the narrative
could
is
only
telling
get
you
so
it's her.
far. Yeah, no, I mean, Nancy could only get so far, and really Rochelle and Bonnie were just sidekicks. Like, they kind of they were suckling on the power of Nancy, but Nancy wasn't as powerful as she wanted to be. And it was only when Sarah entered the picture that things could escalate to the level that they did. and that they were able to attain the sort of skill level that they could with their spells and stuff. And they do kind of explain in a roundabout way that Sarah is a natural born witch brought down from her mother, even though she never knew her mother. So she just had that innate ability, but didn't understand it, didn't know how to harness it, didn't know how to wield it.
Yeah.
And
except for spinning pencils around a desktop.
Daniel, it's a teenage horror flick. Let's but I don't know.
I don't know. Is it really a teenage horror flick? I mean, yeah, it's teen because you have teens in it and whatnot, but I've had a feeling like it was aimed at teens and up, and because I mean it's pretty dark. I don't know. I wouldn't call this a teen film, even though it's centered around teenagers. I don't know. I just found it kind of bugs me when you have such a good story, you have so much meat to a story, and something that is different enough to really attract the attention of an audience, and then you sort of, I don't know, throw a cheat code in there just to get through the plot point. Like, oh, she has powers, so what we're going to do, she's going to spin a pencil on a table. Come on, guys. I know you want to be overt because you've got audiences who are pretty dumb, but that's that.
So what would you have recommended then as a plot device to get them to realize that she had these powers and they needed her?
I would have had her
in their little circle.
I'll tell you what, I would have had her trying to balance that pencil at first, and then pulling her hand away, and then it shaking and then it dropping. I wouldn't have had it spinning the whole time. It just felt so disingenuous as a take. It's like, all right, we really want to sell to the audience that she's got powers. She can't control them, but she can. I want her to develop and learn those powers as it goes along, not have them immediately. And I want the other girl to notice, like, oh my God, wait a minute, does she have power? Not oh, she's got power, I got to go tell them she's the fourth. To me, that was a shortcut. And
they shortcutted a lot of things in the film as far as just to get them to their full witchcraft point. I mean, because they could easily have spent like a good hour or two just kind of like, oh yeah, let's show these girls being picked on. Let's show them desperately trying what they need to do to turn their lives around and try and get in with the popular group or whatever. Sarah, they could have done something a little more subtle with Sarah, but they kind of they took the easier route of, okay, she could be a telekinetic, she could have magic, but I mean, I think to do it more subtly would have taken a lot more time, and I don't think they had the time.
Well, but this director also did Flatliners, and I don't know if you've seen that, but
yes,
about telling a story with some subtlety and then throwing in stuff all of a sudden to make you like almost wet yourself. This director has got skill. I think they could have pulled it off. I'm just saying. But again, I'm picking nits on what I think is a really good story and a really good film. This isn't huge. This isn't like make or break on this film. This is just one of those things that irritated me. I wanted this character to be to work more than she did, instead of just like, okay, we're gonna cut corners here, cut corners here, cut corners here, just so we can get to this where we want to go in the story.
They also chopped the story a lot in editing. It was much longer in those scenes.
See, there you go.
Got it.
Need to know everything right now.
See, because right there, if that is the case, then that makes the criticism even more valid, because what you did was you cut down this film to, I don't know, make it a certain runtime length, only you cut out important parts of the story. You cut out the part that made you like the protagonist.
Unfortunately, at the time that they were looking at this as just a film that they was going to direct towards the teen market, which of course was, we can't stretch it out too long. We gotta cut to the chase. They cut it. I mean, it's What is the runtime in this film? It's not that
20,
long.
20 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Never
Yeah,
asked
I
me
mean,
that question.
it's a short film comparatively. I mean, certainly some of the epics that are done nowadays. But yeah, I mean, I think the producers and directors balked at doing like a 2-hour film on this. It just kept cutting. And
it was probably a product of the time. The 90s were definitely people watching their pennies and trying to fit budgets and whatnot. So I guess that makes sense. I will say though, it's funny that they were trying to get more popular and into the popular crowd or whatever. That comment you made, because for me, their crowd was the crowd I would have hung with. I mean, I was always on the outs at school, not because people didn't like me or anything, but because I was that weirdo, mister. So, and I've got pictures to prove it. I might even post some of them up here just to make everybody laugh. But yeah, I was that weirdo. So,
and I will say too, I do think I was also a weirdo. So we were friends in college, so clearly our weirdness vibed.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can always tell the other weirdos. And
that's
you're
true.
like,
I know.
you gravitate towards each other, and you're like, hey,
there's a weird radar. That's a fact.
There's even a secret handshake.
There is.
Yeah, it's called no handshake.
We have to touch each other? Oh my god.
No, you just have to give each other like a snide look.
And that's when you know that you found your like companion.
Like you're thinking in your head, did that fucker just look at me like that? I'm gonna fucking look at them like that. Okay, we're friends.
Usually when the Dungeons and Dragons dice fell out of my bag, that's when people found me.
Well, and even now, think about it, bro. I'm sorry. Say that again. What was that about the Dungeons?
Yeah, the other weirdos found me when the D&D dice fell out of my bag.
That is definitely a tell.
Yes.
But even up to today, sorry that I jumped on that, but even up to today, the people who want to come on this podcast, we are the weirdos, mister. Just,
Yay!
Who wants to do this?
That's a good thing. Weird makes the world go round. That's a fact.
Yes, but the weirdos have inherited the planet at this point.
Oh, if that were true, the planet would be a better place. I'm just saying.
Oh, I agree.
But I do also think that I don't think they were trying to get in with the popular crowd. I don't think that was their goal at all. I don't think that they wanted that for themselves. I think that they obviously were experiencing trauma from the treatment that they had, but I don't think that they were like, oh man, it would be great if we could like hang with them and go to their parties. Like, I don't think that was
maybe
a thing, except maybe for Nancy in a weird subconscious way. I think that she was
maybe not get with the popular crowd, but definitely at least to not be mistreated as badly, and to at least the boys from the popular crowd that they wanted the attention of, because they wanted boyfriends, they wanted to be loved, they wanted to be accepted. I mean, Nev Campbell's character, when they took the scars off of her and suddenly she was beautiful and suddenly she got all this attention, and then she was basking in it. She was basking in that love, and like, suddenly she's with the popular people want to be with her.
And it turned her into a horrible person too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I got a question for you guys, and I want your take on this because I've now seen this. I saw it when it first came out. I've now watched it twice, well, more 1.5 since then. And there's this transient guy with the snakes in the beginning who walks in on protagonist chick. I can't remember her name. Sarah. Yeah. That's how memorable she is. He walks in on her and he's like, got the snake, and it's supposed to be this creepy, scary moment. But he's like, hey, what's wrong with you? And I'm sitting there thinking, what is wrong with her? I mean, yeah, it's creepy that this guy wandered into her front door, but it's LA. And the guy's got a snake. Why? What was the whole point of that? And is he a witch? Is he some kind of crazy sign or portent? What? I don't understand that character. And I mean, I pull movies apart all the time. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck this guy's doing there. Why is this guy in the story? Does anybody have any idea why he's there?
I think. Oh, go ahead,
No,
Eric.
go ahead. No, go.
Okay. I do think that you're right when you said that he was sort of a portent. My impression that is that he was insane, but also prescient in a way. So he did it at one point say, "I saw you and you died," or something to that extent. And then he was also a great vehicle at like an oddly
Vehicle, good
kind
choice of words.
like I know. Well, I'm so sorry. But like he was a vehicle, someone very disposable that the film writers were happy to just see die without like anyone really caring about, to show the four gals that they had this power when they were together. So that he struck me as more of an odd writing placement to illustrate a couple of things.
Am I being overly critical about that? Because to me, it just,
No.
I guess as a viewer, it didn't make sense to me. This guy, and that popped up in the beginning at her house and then randomly on the street. And then he gets hit by a car because they quote unquote use their powers together. It was a pretty brutal scene too. His head gets run over. It's just nasty. I just was sitting there going, what? Okay. But it's funny because one of my big gripes was that I wanted the magic to be more subtle, which that kind of was. I would rather the magic be something that you have to guess about as opposed to, boom, here's a spell like fireball, or whatever. Lightning bolt. I just was curious what you guys thought about this guy and the snakes.
I get the impression that they wanted this character to show up, and he was supposed to somehow see that Sarah possessed some type of magic or power. He was somehow more connected to magic, and thus could spot that in her, could read that about her, and this was something that scared her, and she didn't understand it. Showing up with the snakes, I'm not sure what the point on that one was.
She had the weird dream about the snakes and the bugs and all the stuff, so maybe that's why they did that. But it just felt kind of weird. Here's this guy with a snake, and then of course the snake wasn't fake. It wasn't like she imagined it. It was obviously there because her father had to jump and kill it with whatever he had. So anyway,
speaking of characters which they didn't do much with, their father character kind of just came and went and written right out like very quickly.
I like though that he was a likable character and he cared about her. He was just oblivious to what was going on with her.
Absolutely.
That at least made you sympathetic towards him when he supposedly was, killed. But I mean, you have to, again, probably cut out. How much time do you have in this film?
Yeah, didn't see those parts.
Back to what I was saying. Because it's an ensemble cast, I thought one of the things we could do is kind of talk a little bit about each character and how we felt their treatment was in the story. I've already kind of told you where I am with the main character, Sarah, because that's her name, played by Robin Tunney. How do you guys have anything you want to add about that character? Did you feel like, personally, I didn't care for the protagonist of the film and I couldn't identify with her, but how about you guys?
The Sarah character, I found her very, very generic, honestly. It was one of those, okay, they're setting her up to be the protagonist, be the good girl. But it was hard for me to connect with her personally, aside from feeling sympathetic because the other girls were all messing with her, turning on her, even though she seemed critical to their acquisition of this power to begin with. It was like she was the key to them becoming who they were, and then they they decided to turn on her because she didn't want to go along with them in their, I don't know, abusive behavior of those that they decided to get revenge upon.
That felt like later, though, didn't it? I mean, she did develop a friendship with them, and they developed a coven.
Yes.
So they were definitely intertwined, and obviously, we don't know how long that went on for. It feels like the time was, cut.
Yes.
But she threw them over pretty quickly for the douchiest dude in the school. I mean, she kept chasing that guy and being interested in the guy that had, maybe he was interested in her for a moment, but that is another part of this thing that, and I know girls do stuff like this. They go with guys like that, but just, oh God, that annoyed me. It just annoyed me to watch. Like, really? You want this guy to like you? I mean, I loved what happened to him. Don't get me wrong. If he could have fallen from a higher up window, I'd have been much happier. But
that was the Skeet Ulrich character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to get it in.
Yeah. I will say with Sarah, I do have a slightly different take on her than you two gentlemen do. I did not dislike her nearly as much as you guys seem to.
It's not dislike, it's indifference.
Indifference. Okay, yeah, I get that. I do feel like, though, she was a great counterbalance to Nancy. And I wish I could remember the shop owner's name of the witchy shop. I don't remember that character, but she was lovely.
Delenn.
She was very Delenny. She was in the best possible way. But she talked about how, magic is not good or bad. It's what you do with it and what your intentions are.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a great counterbalance to Nancy in that way, that Nancy viewed power as force and bending things to your will in this really strict and constrained way that was very much about her. That's even illustrated when they're calling the quarters and she says, "Hear me," and then one of them says, "Us." So she's really just looking for power for herself, not really understanding that true power is not force. Whereas I feel like Sarah was a good illustration of someone who was powerful without being forceful. And I think that is more true power than the opposite.
I would agree with that. I just wish she'd been written better, that she would have been a character that I could have liked, but I didn't like her, But I mean,
that's
it's
fair.
It's more than didn't like her. It's when I'm ambivalent and I don't really care. To me, that's a problem in the writing. That's a problem in connecting a character. Of course, maybe I'm not the demographic they're trying to target with that character either. So there could be that. Who knows? But you brought up Nancy, so let's segue to Nancy. I think that she's probably my favorite character in this film, even though she's the villain of the group, because she plays insane really, really well. There are some serious acting chops going on with this character, and I feel like the best, well, I mean, we'll get to that later. We haven't actually put up our award nominations, but I definitely think that she is one of the best performances in this film. Her background, I've been listening to a podcast on serial killers lately. While I'm at work, I'm cleaning and doing what I'm doing. And the background that she has, living in the trailer park, the abuse, the neglect, the poverty, all those things, all those moments, are the type of things that happen to serial killers that make that switch flip. And then they want control. And the way they get control is they wrest control somehow. And I believe that if that character from that point was allowed to go on, she definitely would have fit a serial killer profile. It's interesting that, I like the character, but I think it's just partialness. I think it's just that it's well played, well written. how do you guys feel about her? I'm going to read a quote from her actually, real quick, because I thought this was interesting. She said, "I'm beginning to get pigeonholed as the girl who plays the crazies and weirdos. And that's not the entirety of who I am. Hopefully, the whole point of being in this profession is that you change into anyone you want to be." Kind of a cool quote. Anyway, what do you guys think of the character of Nancy?
I think Nancy had the most. She probably should have been the main character in the film, quite frankly. She had the best performance on the screen of the four girls. You saw the most about her, because quite frankly, I offhand cannot remember much of anything about the other two girls. You know, Bonnie or Rochelle. Like, very little about those two come out anywhere. So it really
one
is.
was a diver, one had scars,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we saw her at a medical appointment where, yeah. But that's, with her mom, and that was about it. There was nothing else about these other girls.
Can I stop you for a second? Because you said something that I found really, really cool right there. And what you did was you broke Hollywood tropes. This film should have been about her. Can you imagine how much better this film would have been if they had centered it on Nancy and her downfall, as opposed to, let's go with the tropey good witch story? I think it would have been better if the tropey good witch was just an additional character who ended up being the cause of her downfall, as opposed to, let's center it around this goody girl that's not really a goody girl, that's really confused and goes after douchey dudes. I would have much rather the story be centered on Nancy. I think what you just said is absolutely brilliant, and this is why Hollywood needs you. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were still a few generations away from giving us a villain as the lead films back then. But yeah, she really was the one that we got to spend the most time with. I personally had a thing for her as an actress. I thought she was a beautiful woman. Having got a chance to actually physically see her at the studio was amazing. I sat there tongue-tied like an idiot, of course. Didn't say anything to her, but just got to just see her from across the room, kind of thing. So yeah, a beautiful woman, beautiful, definitely a talented actress. The character definitely had the most screen time, and she could have been the yeah, I agree, probably one of the best character in the whole film. Yeah.
Now I'm curious to see how wrong we actually are. So, Tanya, it's your turn.
I actually heartily agree, I think, with both of you. I think I hate her in opposite ends of the spectrum. She was absolutely the most complex character in the film, and she was written in a way that was showing a sort of downfall into insanity and evil based upon bad decisions of being a young person with trauma. But there were moments where she exhibited tremendous tenderness and kind of whimsy that were just few and far between, but it was enough that was sprinkled in there that you're like, man, she's great. Like, I would love to be friends with her, like, she's just, yeah, she was great. And then I'm sure when we get later in the podcast, when we get to our nominations, we'll discuss her, Fairuza Balk, much more intensely, because I have a feeling we're all in agreement.
Yeah,
on that nomination.
I have to agree. I feel like she was the one that came across as the most human, meaning flawed and still a good person at the same time at the beginning of the film. I know obviously she was the one who threw the hard looks and was the, the one who was obviously damaged. She was like, if I was to give an analogy on this, say you have a vase and it's got a couple of cracks in it. I think this is her character in the beginning of this film. And as the film goes on, more and more cracks start to appear in this vase, and pretty soon it's just entirely broken. And it's cool because you could watch it happening as the film went on. And I really found that not just compelling, but it was interesting. And that's why when Eric said, hey, they could have made this film about her, missed opportunity. They should have done it. I guess it's the time, but it's to be a missed opportunity. Still a good movie. It's not a bad movie. Just why didn't they think about this back then?
Perhaps. I know there was just a reboot not too long ago, but perhaps they could consider another reboot, a reboot of the reboot, if you will.
Did anybody see the reboot?
No.
Okay.
No, but I found out about it because we were doing this, and I was thinking, hey, maybe I should cue this up and watch it, see what it's all about. Let's briefly talk about the other two characters, especially since Eric has already told us he doesn't remember much about them at all. So you've got the Nev Campbell character, who is your connect the dots character, the one who sees her spinning the pencil, and she's our fourth, right? And she is the most approachable character, I think, in the beginning of the film, especially for the outsider. And she's also the meekest. She seems like the sweetest until she gets her scars fixed, and then she becomes one of the worst. I didn't really have a problem with this character. I felt like she fits in like a perfect little puzzle piece. I may have a problem with the way they introduced the magic to her, but I feel like she was the perfect vehicle to make this group work. What are your thoughts on that, Tanya?
Yeah, I will say, even though I loved Nancy and would have been friends with her, I probably in real life was much closer to Bonnie in terms of my actual sort of state of being. So I think I empathized with her more in that way. I do feel like her and Rochelle both were very much just accessories to the larger story, which I get, but I do wish that they would have delved a little more deeply into them as humans, because it was only relational. Like the only reason that they were really there, aside from a few little blips about the struggles that they were having, was to mirror Nancy and Sarah. Like that was their primary driver in the story, which I felt like was a missed opportunity.
Well, based on Eric's comments, there probably was a lot more, just got cut out.
True.
Eric, how do you feel about that character?
The Bonnie character? The Bonnie character, there wasn't much there on screen. There really wasn't much there. Which I thought was interesting, because when I first heard about this film or even started seeing clips of it, Nev Campbell was the more bankable star at the time. So it was just kind of one of those like, oh, she's now in this, in this picture that'll probably elevate her status as a star. And she was such a minor, almost forgettable character. I wonder if that was because she just didn't have time to put into this project, or if that was just, just what she was stuck with as far as the character went.
I gotta say, I doubt it came down to the actor's choice. Usually that's writers and producers.
Yes.
And they go, hey, we got the name on here. We've got so much time. We can cut a bunch of her scenes and still, she's still getting the big check.
Yeah. And I mean, they had to do all that makeup on her, but to give her those scars for those scenes. But it wasn't her vehicle as far as the film went. I mean,
fair enough. Well, that leaves us with one other character, and that's Rachel True's Rochelle. And I mean, this character, obviously, they could have given us a lot more. We never see her parents. We only see her being teased and bullied at school, unless she's with the group. And the teasing and bullying is from one person. You don't get a myriad of teasing, but it's pretty harsh. And especially for the 90s, because this wasn't like a subject that was broached a lot at this time. This is something you'd see now, right? I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Because honestly, I thought it was good that they included this, but knowing the time period, I'm wondering if it was really to tackle the racism or just to throw in somebody that she could have a big enough gripe against to give in to that darker side of the magic. I'm curious as to how you guys feel about it. Tanya, why don't you start us?
I do think her story was more powerful than Bonnie's, for sure. I mean, obviously, as a white woman, I've never had to deal with racism, so I can't say like, oh my God, I totally know what that's like, because I can't. But for them to tackle the subject, even in a peripheral way at that time, I think was really cool. But I don't know how intentional that was, or if they were just, like what they were going for in terms of what they wanted that to look like.
Neither do I. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't know. But I do think I liked her treatment, particularly when she saw the results of what she wished for and the ramifications of that. And you could see the doubt and the sort of remorse of like, oh my God, what did I do? She had a little bit more layers than Bonnie did, for sure. But yeah, she was cool, bitch.
And it was really cool how subtle the magic was here. This is what I meant by like overt magic. You're going to see a big fiery explosion, or the way magic theoretically works. I'm no magician. I'm no witch or anything, but I've known plenty of people who are involved in Wicca and whatnot, and they don't cast fiery spells and walk on water and stuff like that. This is much more in line with the type of things that would happen, at least in the experience of what people have told me. And I really liked that. I felt like that was a good representation of what the magic should be. Eric, this character, sorry, I'm segueing off and going back into the magic story thing here. This character of Rochelle, you said you didn't remember much about her. Is any of this bringing back memories for you and kind of giving you something to go with here?
Not really much. I mean, it was just kind of seemed like we have these 4 characters that we've cast, 4 actresses. The Rachel True character, Rochelle, happens to be a woman of color, and we need to figure out why she's amongst the outcasts aside from her race, I guess, which was an interesting choice to make for the writer's part, but I don't know. And it just seemed a little, I don't know, because we don't know anything else about her besides that, she hangs out with the others, the other outcasts, and there's a racist person at the school that doesn't like her.
I will give them this, is that sort of behavior was prevalent at my school. There were people that were just horrible to other people. And I mean, whoever made this film obviously came from our generation and had experienced stuff like that at their school. And it's evidence in the writing and the way this abuse and all this stuff goes through here. I'm still trying to connect the dots with it. Is this really a statement about the racism, or is this just really trying to find a way to make this character work in the story? Don't really know. Either way, I'm glad it's in there because it is horrible. And I like the way it resolves itself, and that this horrible racist piece of shit has to deal with that in the end. Is that bad of me to say? That's bad of me to say, isn't it? Oh, it's terrible that her hair falls out because she's a horrible person. Okay, onward.
That's a horrible thing for a teenager to experience. Yeah.
Well,
But
racism's a horrible
even
thing for a teenager to
even
experience too, isn't it?
even Rochelle showed more remorse than you in that moment.
Well, she's a good person. Hey, I told you, me and Nancy were hanging out. Did you catch that? I got a couple of did you catch that's from this film. Lots of covers of great songs in this film. Not a whole lot of originals. A lot of covers. Anybody notice that?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Same. I loved the music, but I wasn't cognizant of the fact that it was all covers.
Yeah, really good music, definitely. One of my favorites is a cover done by Letters to Cleo of one of my favorite bands of all time growing up, the 70s, 80s Boston-based band, The Cars. It's the Dangerous Type. Love the song. Rick Ocasek's lyrics, great stuff. Interesting side note, Greg Hawkes, who was the keyboard player in The Cars, is in the Letters to Cleo video playing keyboards. Freaking cool.
Interesting.
The character, Tasha Powell. Anybody remember Tasha Powell? Not very well. She's sort of just a throwaway character. She's played by Holly Marie Combs, who went on to star in the television show Charmed.
No way.
Hey, did you catch that?
Oh my God. I feel like I need to rewatch the movie just to find her. That's great. That's awesome.
Well, my last did you catch that we need a little sound effect of some kind of alarm for this, because we have a history on this show of running into John Capellos in the weirdest places. Remember, he was the janitor from the Breakfast Club, and he popped up in something else we were doing, and he's also the creepy abusive stepfather in the trailer.
Oh, no way! Shut up. You're right.
Right? I was looking at the credits and I'm like, John Capellos, what the hell? Who's that guy? Sitting there thinking, no way, he was the creepy abusive stepfather. Wow. I didn't even recognize him when he was in there. So that was pretty cool. Anybody else have a did you catch that moment? Or am I the only one who prepares for this segment?
I have two. One of them isn't really, it's kind of like an obvious nod to another teen horror flick. There's a moment where Nancy is having a nightmare and all of the three come into her bedroom flying and they're in her face laughing. And that was so Lost Boys to me. Like, that was the epitome of like a chick Lost Boys. And I thought that was a lovely touch. And another thing that was crazy watching it this time around, because I haven't really seen it since either the 90s or the early 2000s, the impact of inflation. So she goes to the magic store, right? And she gets 2 books and 3 candles, and it's only $20. Like, what the F, people? I'm sorry, but like, that shows like how much less our money is worth now than it was then, and it's very sad. And then I remembered that Nancy and her mother inherited what at the time I thought was a large amount of money, and then the guy was like $175,000, and I was like, what
and
the
they're
hell is
losing.
that gonna get you? Like that's so.
They're totally losing their shit over it. They're like, oh my God, you know. And I'm thinking, wow, once you pay the taxes on that, and you know, maybe you could stick some in the bank or put it into a CD and hope in 5 to 10 years you'd have something. But that's not a lot of money.
Inflation is real, people.
But for Nancy and her mom, you know, even $100,000 would have been unheard of in their bank accounts.
Yeah, because
That's
they were
true.
living in a trailer. I mean, you don't live in a trailer because you've got a big fat bank account.
Right.
Well, nowadays you do in California.
Ah,
No,
fact.
there are actually people in younger generations who are like, I'm going to get a van and live out of that. And I mean, more power to you, but that's a tiny living space.
If you can do it, I mean,
That's the
It's
joke,
got-
right? There's the meme with Chris Farley saying, living in a van down by the river.
yeah.
Now that's a life goal.
If you can make a living of it, and some people have, which is very interesting.
Well, as Tanya said, inflation's a thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Look, Tanya, you just said it and you're already being quoted.
Amazing. I feel my power reverberating through
I mean,
the universe right now.
I mean, it is crazy nowadays because I mean, California. I mean, if you're pulling in a 6-figure salary, you're still, at the upper end of middle class. You haven't even hit upper class yet. I mean, it's frightening.
Smidge, just a smidge.
More frightening than a horror film.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
Reality sucks.
my parents bought a 3-bedroom house in 1971 for $25,000.
Wow.
I can't even get a car for $25,000.
Not a new one. Well,
Yeah.
you could, but it would be one of the most bare bones things on the planet.
Yes.
I know that, dude.
Do you guys know who Brenda Strong is? Because I'll tell you what, I've seen her in everything. Did I realize I was seeing her? I didn't. But our dear friend Tanya decided that she wanted to focus tonight's I Know That Dude on Brenda Strong. And I was like, sure, okay. Well, I get to know somebody, see if I've actually seen it. Oh, yeah, I've seen a lot of these things. So my experience with Brenda Strong is that I've seen her in a whole bunch of things. Didn't realize I was seeing her. Tanya, your turn.
All right. So the reason that specifically I really wanted to nominate her is because our season finale last time, or for our last season, was Starship Troopers. And I think she was a name who was tossed into the ring at that time for the Hey, I Know You. And then I was like, how ironic. Like, I was watching the Craft and I'm like, oh my God, who's that doctor lady? And I couldn't place where I had seen her. And so I had to IMDb her. And lo and behold, she was in Starship Troopers. I'll be damned. She was also in Fear the Walking Dead. And I'm a huge fan of the Walking Dead.
Which I
universe.
watched. I watched the entire thing. And did I know she was in it? Nope.
Yes, but she's been in a lot. She's a great actress. Super cool. Really good acting chops. And familiar face, but like for some reason it doesn't land all the time, and so you're like, where the hell do I know her from?
Well,
So she is like one of the perfect epitomes for this particular category.
She's
I think.
obviously good enough to get cast in everything. And obviously, over time, she's probably got the potential to be a nominee many, many times on our show because she's in everything we watch. So there's that. Eric, what is your history with Brenda Strong? Do you know who she is?
I recognize her face now that I'm looking at her profile and pictures. I immediately did recognize her from Starship Troopers. She was the commander of the ship that what's her name was flying. Killed by a safety equipment of the blast door, of all things. Killed by safety equipment. That happens so often.
Oh, the irony.
You know, especially when OSHA hasn't visited regularly, that's usually a problem.
Yes. Apparently she was a character on Party of Five with Nev Campbell. So
Hey, tie-in. Good job. That's a did you catch that right there?
yeah. But no, I'm not familiar with her work aside from just a face that I've seen a few times. And yeah.
You know what? She has a copy of The Craft. I guarantee you. Sorry, just throwing it back to earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you look at her like filmography, we've seen a lot of these films, and I'm just gonna name off a few, like a good few here. But Spaceballs, right off the bat. Oh, Spaceballs, Skin Deep, The Crafts, Starship Troopers, Black Dog, Undercurrent. Let's see, Red Dragon, Starship Troopers 2, Here of the Federation, which I've seen, but I need to rewatch that because it's been a long time. Let's see. And the rest of them I haven't seen, but we'll go into television. Here again is where you go, yeah, okay, absolutely. I've definitely seen her. Did I know it was her? Nope. Saint Elsewhere, Misfits of Science, Shadow Chasers, MacGyver, Cheers. Cheers. Everybody's been on Cheers, right? Sledgehammer, another show I absolutely loved when I was younger. Dallas, Hotel, Kenny Rogers the Gambler, Part 3, The Legend Continues, Star Trek, The Next Generation. Watched all of those. Did I know I was watching her? Nope. Hooperman.
Wait, who was she on Star Trek Next Generation? Does it say what episode she was in?
She was
or the name of her character?
Her name was Rochella on the episode When the Bow Breaks.
Oh my god! Oh, I know exactly who that is. Oh my god, that's amazing. Okay, sorry. Continue.
You Star Trek geek, you.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. That's actually a good thing. All right, Twin Peaks. She was on as Jones, and I watched Twin Peaks, all of it. Do I remember seeing her? All right, I'm going to keep saying that. Blossom, Murphy Brown. Let's see here. Herman's Head.
Loved that show.
Picket Fences, Silk Stockings, ER, Murphy Brown, The John Larroquette Show, Third Rock from the Sun. Do I remember seeing her? Seinfeld. Do I remember seeing her? I'm telling you, she's been in everything. Now I'm going to have to pay attention. Ally McBeal, CSI Crime Scene Investigation, Gilmore Girls. I watched all of that. Dawson's Creek, Malcolm in the Middle, Nip Tuck. Oh my God, Desperate Housewives. Curb Your Enthusiasm, another show I love. Boston Legal, Scoundrels, Dallas again. I guess they made a new Dallas. Wasn't going to watch that. Let's see. Bones, Chicago PD. I mean, she's been in everything. Fear the Walking Dead, Supergirl, 13 Reasons Why. Guys, gals,
yeah.
Goobers. This person is prolific.
She's definitely a working actress.
So I got to thank you, Tanya, for bringing somebody to our attention that we probably should have noticed all along, but just didn't.
Hey, she was apparently Miss Arizona in 1980.
Yeah.
No kidding.
This is already a really long segment, so I wasn't going to go too much into that, but she may end up getting a second I Know That Dude in the future, just with all the things she's been in. And maybe we can go into it then. Welcome to the Academy of Popped, where we award the best and the worst performance in a film or a television show. And we apologize. Last episode for Brazil, we didn't have this segment. And I blame our co-host, who was so good at giving us really interesting talking points, because I was so enthralled with what he was saying, I literally forgot and skipped over this segment. So good on you, Glenn. You got me. Our best performance nominees are Veruza Balk for Nancy Downs, Rachel True for Rochelle Zimmerman, Helen Shaver for Grace Downs, Nancy's mother, and Nev Campbell for Bonnie Harper. And the winner is, Tanya, you want to say who the winner is?
Veruza Balk! Hands down.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Nancy down, hands down.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, she was, in a word, well, this movie was really her film. more than anything, when I think we all three said this in not so many words, when you think of this film, you think of Nancy. Like, she is the first person that comes to your mind. She's the one that sticks with you 30 years later. Um, Her performance in this, as I was rewatching it, is fearless. And her acting chops, the way that she can just go for it, not be afraid to look weird or ugly or anything. She just throws herself. Like, good on her. She was amazing.
Yeah.
So yay, Feruza.
The range of her ability to go from 0 to 100 is unlike many actors I've seen. She's extremely skilled, and I'm a little disappointed that I haven't seen her in more things besides like The Waterboy. I would really have expected any casting agent to have seen this performance to go, oh yeah, this is what this film calls for. We need somebody who has this kind of range. I'm just beside myself. I just met her at the Creature Con in Sacramento. And unfortunately for me, by that point in the day, I was physically and mentally wiped. So I didn't have a lot to say. I think I went up and said, yeah, oh, hi, can you sign this, please? I gave her my name. And I think she said something like, oh, you're very sweet, darling, signed it. And I was like, oh, that was really nice. And then I felt like, wow, I sat there and had this massive conversation with Casper Van Dien, and then I totally just wah wah when I met her. But I chalk it up to being tired. Anyway, very cool performance. Eric, what do you think?
I love her personally. I mean, I've seen quite a few of her films. I'm probably one of the few people that actually saw this strange little period piece called Deuces Wild that she was in. Loved her in Almost Famous. That
that was definitely different.
Yeah, that was a great role for her. American History X, I saw her in that. Definitely stood out in that one as well. But yeah, she's definitely a talent. It took me forever to realize that she played the role of Dorothy in Return to Oz.
Oh,
she was the
when
little
she was
girl.
A little girl, yeah.
Yeah. I never made that connection until well past watching this film as an adult.
Yeah, it's hard to make that connection because she looks so different from when she was a child. Not in a bad way. She just looked different.
Strangely, not that. I mean, looking back now, if you see Return to Oz, you can see.
Yeah, if you do
there.
a face by face comparison, you can see it. But when you haven't seen that movie in how many years, and then you see her in the future, you're not thinking, oh, that's the girl from Return to Oz. Yeah, no, you're not.
Yeah. Well, not to mention Return to Oz traumatized many of us as children. So we probably didn't see it. We probably didn't see that more than once.
We have one more award to give away, and I think we really need to get to this. Is important. Our nominee for worst performance is Skeet Ulrich. Everybody for Skeet Ulrich, raise your hand. Say aye.
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 Say it again, Tanya.
Aye.
Put your hand up.
Hi.
There we go. And the reason is because I can see that everybody got in the camera with their hand up except for you. So that's why I had to have you make a sound. It's like when we do the dancing, if you don't make a sound, the camera doesn't focus on you. That's why it's always this dork. All right. All right. Yeah. Skeet Ulrich, not an impressive performance. And I remember he was like all the rage in the early 90s. And now I watch him and think he's even more ridiculous. And I'm thinking, okay, so this was just kind of like the hot ticket at the time. And it really didn't have much to do with talent. I mean, that may be harsh, but I'm watching this performance and looking at this guy who strolled in his 20-year-old clothes. And I'm like, and I know there was a style where everybody was wearing like, I don't know, hand-me-downs or something, but it was awful. It was just, he was just sort of there. And it felt like he maybe read the script right before they shot. I don't know. It just felt like a half-ass performance. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Who else has something to say about Skeet?
I have to say, when you said it looks like he read the script right before they shot, that's the perfect description of his acting in this film. He's been in some other stuff that I've liked. Like there was a show, I think he was in this show called Jericho. I think that was him. I think it only ran for a season or two, but that was really good. And there was another.
Was it good because of him, or was it just a good show?
It was just a good show. And I remember his acting was like, I think there was more range because there was more meat to the actual character because he was one of the title characters. I hope I'm not like confusing him with somebody else. And there was another short-lived show that he was also in that I can't think of the name of for the life of me, which is not helpful to anybody, so I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, he got
but
he
yeah,
got outshined by his little cohorts in this film. They were more
100%.
memorable than he was. He was just
Absolutely.
Kind of Eric, what do you think about Skeet's performance? Skeet.
Oh goodness.
Skeet.
Very forgettable. Quite frankly, he was very forgettable. A lot of his early stuff just kind of felt like, I don't know, he got the role because he couldn't afford Johnny Depp, because he kind of had that look, and it was just like they shared a similar look for a while there, and it was just kind of like, okay, we got discount saver Johnny Depp, so we got Skeet Ulrich.
He's like the Wish version of Johnny Depp.
Kinda. At least it was in those early days for me, Not saying that like he couldn't act, because he did okay in Scream, and he was, for what he did and as good as it gets, But a lot of times it's just, I don't know.
Oh God, that's right. He was the weird kid and As Good as It Gets that broke in and stole the stuff from Greg Kinnear.
He was the good-looking guy that Greg Kinnear found on the street and sketched, and he and his friends robbed him and beat the crap out of him.
Wow. And there's another Nev Campbell connection as well. Interesting.
Huh.
Yes.
Why is there a connection? She dated him or something?
Have you seen Scream?
I did.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. She was the final girl in Scream. You're right. I'm sorry.
She was like the main character of the franchise.
That was just a brain fart that I didn't connect. And he said that Skeet was in it, but again, forgettable. Like the dude is so forgettable to me. Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out where Nev Campbell fit in with As Good as It Gets. Which is probably why I didn't make that connection right away.
All right. Well, we only have one thing left to do. Do you guys know what that is?
We're gonna get to poppin'. Gonna get to poppin'. Yep.
Wait, how do this way? That way. There we go.
Does it matter which way we go? I don't know. Does it? Yeah. That was fun.
Okay. Sorry, I was kind of like, is there going to be music, or are we just making up music?
Eric's getting docked pay. He knows what we're supposed to do here.
I was told there would be no dance.
You were told wrong. All right, Eric, why don't we start with you, our guest. How many pops would you give The Craft?
All
right.
Let's see. On a 5 pops being best, if I recall.
It hasn't been that long, man. Come on.
I'd give this a solid 3. 3 pops out of 5. You know, had its moments. I was not the target demographic for it. It's grown on me in the time. I mean, when I first was working on it, I would have said 2. Now I give it a 3.
Your opinion's gone up. Interesting.
Yes.
Tanya, how many pops do you give The Craft?
I'm surprising myself as I'm even thinking and about to say it. I'm gonna give this 4 pops. Primarily because of Fairuza Balk's performance, I thought was amazing. For the timing, this movie has a soft spot in my heart because it was a girl power film at the time when there was definitely a lack of those like a weird girl power film. So that I think was really special. And because of its watchability. I haven't watched it in a really long time. I watched it last night and then I watched it again this morning. And I wasn't bothered either time. So good on you, The Craft. 4 pops for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Tanya, I don't know what it is, but you and I have been in sync over the last couple of votes. I give it 4 pops.
Ooh.
The reason is that I think it's a great film overall. I think it treats magic and Wicca with respect, even though I do feel like it goes overboard sometimes. Fairuza Balk was amazing in this role, and I would have loved to see her in a whole lot more things. You know, she got a couple more roles after this, but I really think she's underutilized. It's a great ensemble cast, great music. My big gripe, and what keeps it from being more than 4, is that I want my protagonist to be someone that maybe I don't have to identify with, but is at least someone who's sympathetic. Not liking snakes, being upset that your dad moved to LA, that's not a thing for me. And her pursuit of a douchebag bro and need to be accepted by him was weird, and it took out any kind of understanding that I personally would have had for her. Maybe somebody else identifies with that, and again, as Eric said, I'm not the target demographic, so that's probably why that's an issue. But hey, that's a minor thing. I think that the idea is great, and the story was definitely needed, and I like that it was the witch version of The Lost Boys in a sense. Maybe not as funny, you know, but it definitely brought witches into the 90s and made them edgy and sexy and interesting. So, booyah. 4 pops for The Craft.
Outstanding. What are you doing?
The music's still on, don't you know that? Y'all ain't dancing, but the music is still on. Ready? You know, got to do the old Saturday night shuffle. All right. Enough of that silliness. You can find us at poppodcast.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and X. We also have this little thing called Patreon, which will be recording an episode right after this. It'll be very quick, but we will be doing it. And if you're on Patreon, you get that episode way before everybody else. It's kind of cool. Tanya, tell them about Patreon.
Okay, so if you are enjoying listening to us crazy Gen Xers discuss movies that you've probably never heard of before in your entire lives, and you would like to support us, we have a little Patreon page that has actually gotten us through some pretty hard times, little things, equipment malfunctions, things that we needed to upgrade. It was there for us, and we thank all of our people who have been supporting us. But if you really want to do some meaningful support for our little podcast, Patreon is the way to do it. And we thank you for considering it with whatever little buckaroos you might have, because inflation is a thing and we get it.
Sure thing. And speaking of which, one of our Patreons is here with us on the show. And if you donate at a certain tier, you can be a guest host on the show. Eric's a guest host just because we like him. But I mean, honestly, that is a perk of giving to Patreon. You can come on the show and maybe pick a film for us to review. So that's something to think about. We also put polls up there, and we have some good content that we're going to be putting out this year for our Patreon people. You also get cool stuff like stickers and mugs and things like that. And as time goes by and we get more Patreon supporters, we'll start putting more things up there. So it's not required. The podcast is still free. You can still watch us for free. But if you like what we do and you want to help us out, we'd love it. Tanya, do you have anything else?
You know, Daniel, I think I am just too poop to pop.
How about you, Eric?
It was a lot of fun joining you guys again. I'd love to do more of this, and thank you for having me. Keep on popping.
Sorry. I love when he says that. It's awesome. Anyway, I guess we're off, and we're leaving as well.